Hey, I'm Mike Sheridan and you're very welcome to this bonus episode of The Delve. Mission Impossible Fallout is being heralded as one of the blockbusters of the summer, with many critics calling the sixth film in the series the best of the bunch. Lofty stuff. I spoke to the film's Oscar-winning writer and director Chris McQuarrie about Tom Cruise jumping out of planes, what life was like after winning an Academy Award for The Usual Suspects, and his cult classic debut, Way of the Gun. And that's not even all. I also had a quick yap with the disconcertingly handsome Henry Cavill, who talked Brazilian jiu-jitsu and stardom. Mission Impossible Fallout was released in cinemas on July 25th.
You talked about where you got the name for Kaiser Soze. It was one of your old bosses or something, was it?
It was a guy I worked with. Yeah, he was a lawyer at the law firm where I worked named Kaiser Sume. And when his last name is pronounced Sue-me, we decided to change the name.
Does he have any idea?
He did. We called to ask him permission, and he was very nice about it. And he said, "Look, I'm sure you guys are going to make a good movie, and I'm sure it'll be successful. I just want to make sure the name is not used in a way that prevents me from getting clients. What kind of guy is this Kaiser?" And I was like,
he may or may not exist.
And I opened the script directly to the page where he murders his family. I said, I should probably just change the name. So that's what we did.
For this film, though, it's the sixth film in the franchise.
Yes.
You've come back for a second time.
Yes.
And it's interesting when you talk to directors or hear directors talking about these scale of movies. So Sam Mendes is an example for the two Bond movies. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm not sure I can quite do that again. You know, movies of this scale. So what brought you back this time and to write exclusively as well?
Tom and his very persuasive nature convinced me to come back. I was reluctant to do it. Not because of the scale of the movie, but more out of a concern that fans of the franchise have come to expect a different director every time. And I didn't want to mess with that. I knew I would be swimming upstream against that one particular group. So when Tom continued to insist that I do the movie, I said I'll do it on the condition that it's a different director. I'm not going to follow in the normal trajectory of Ghost Protocol to Rogue Nation. Rogue Nation really paid fealty to Ghost Protocol, and I think Ghost Protocol figured out what mission was, and Rogue Nation obeyed that template. I said we're going to do something different entirely, and I want to make a more emotional movie, a darker movie, and one that's more about character first and action second.
And you and Tom have this kind of incredible shorthand now, like Tom refers to as McHugh.
Yes.
Which is really cool. When he's doing over 100 takes of a sky jump, is that shorthand obviously comes in handy?
That shorthand comes in very handy, especially when you're talking in hand signals because you're wearing oxygen masks. Yes, it was 105 jumps over the course of about a month. Not 105 takes. We'd still be there because you only had 3 minutes a day to shoot. There's 3 minutes of available light at dusk because by the time you land and got a new shoot on and went back up, it would be dark. So all day long they would rehearse by jumping out first at a lower altitude, and then the last 3 jumps of the day would be out of the C-17, and then the actual take would be the last jump of the day. And so over the course of a month, it was 105 jumps to get that 2.5, 3 minutes on film.
I'm strange because I always think of the cameraman in those situations. It's like you ever watch Bear Grylls and he's out in the wild and you're like, how is Bear doing this? And I'm like, there's some guy with a camera on his shoulder
with a huge backpack with a first aid kit in it in case anything goes wrong. Yes, everything Tom did, the cameraman had to do backwards. And his name's Craig O'Brien. He's a skydiving photographer, a skydiving videographer, I guess you would call it. He'd never done narrative film. He wasn't a cinema camera operator. So everything that he did, he had to learn how to do. It was a completely new skill set for him, on top of everything else that he was doing. And I knew when Tom was jumping out of a plane that the only way to make the sequence work is for the camera operator to go out backwards and looking back at Tom, what we call pulling Tom as opposed to pushing him. And if you're going to be over his shoulder, you might as well just have a stuntman do it. So by virtue of the fact that Tom was doing it, it told us where the camera had to be. And Tom, of course, wanted to take that a step further, and he said, how much action can we shoot in the plane before I go out of the plane? And we originally wanted to do the entire scene as a oneer. But I was forced to do a cut because you had to see Tom's point of view before of the lightning storm, and I needed a crane to do it before Tom could turn around and confront Henry. So everything was very practical decisions were all dictated by the limitations of camera and how much we could do on the plane. And we even experimented with putting a level flooring down on the plane and putting the camera operator in a chair and wheeling him around like on a dolly and throwing him out of the plane with the chair on. We experimented with all of it, and ultimately what he did is he walks around Tom. But the camera's mounted on the top of his head, and he can't see through the camera. He can only see through a little viewfinder with just a crosshair on it. So imagine if I'm filming you, I actually have to be crouched down like this, looking at your chest, knowing the camera's...
There's so much technique to it, obviously.
There's a lot of work that went into it. And for something that seems deceptively simple, as you say with Bear Grylls, you forget there's a cameraman there and that what the cameraman needs to do to be in the right place. And when Tom jumps out of the plane, the camera operator's falling at a steady speed and Tom has to catch up with him and slow himself down and stop 3 feet away from the camera. If he goes too far, he goes out of focus because the camera had a minimum focus and Tom had 3 inches margin of error at that time of day because the light is so low. So imagine you have to actually fall to your mark in thin air and bring yourself to a stop in relation to the camera while you're falling at 160 miles an hour. It's an incredibly complicated show.
Terrifying and complicated.
Really complicated. And if you want to get nerdier, I can get even nerdier on how complicated it is. Pulling focus the camera operator could only pull focus within a certain range. So we had a second focus puller on the plane. And when Tom and the camera operator jump out of the plane, one focus puller had to shut off his focus, and the camera operator had to turn his focus on. And you had to hope that the camera was able to focus before Tom got to it.
There's a couple more we talked about the Usual Suspects script at the top, and it's one of my favorite scripts. But
Thanks.
I also want to talk about The Way of the Gun because it's in my top 10. Speaking of getting nerdy, right? But what was it like post? Because you took your time before you directed Way of the Gun when you first won the awards for the Usual Suspects script. What was it like? What was it like being in Hollywood and being this Oscar-winning screenwriter?
Not what I expected. That happened obviously very early in my career. That was only my second film, and that immediately distorts your sense of what is real and what is possible. I was very young, I was very naive, and I thought that having that award would give me the power to do things. But as a writer, it didn't. It only gave what it meant was they would pay me more money to make their movies. They were not going to give me money to make mine, and I struggled with that, and no one sat me down and explained that to me. I had to figure that out the hard way, and I'm a very slow learner. Then there was a movie that I wanted to direct about Alexander the Great, and I knew I couldn't direct that first, so I embarked on a directing career as a means to an end. And of course, being the very slow learner I am, I tried to make anything but a crime film. Nobody wanted anything from me but a crime film, and instead of playing ball, I made a very antagonistic crime movie that was sort of, with both middle fingers extended, saying, I'm going to make a crime film, I'm going to make it my way. And then was surprised to find out that it wasn't a commercial success and that nobody cared that I had written The Usual Suspects. They just wanted their movie delivered to them. And The Way of the Gun doesn't do that. It's a very challenging film, and it's one that demands that you pay close attention and read into it. And I learned the hard way that people get very angry about that sort of thing. They reject it.
We're going to revisit The Way of the Gun on another show we do called The Film Show this week, because the authenticity in that film, first of all, the opening scene, and I know there was a back and forth about the opening scene. You're setting a template from the start. You're kind of going, we're going to mess with you here from the start.
Yes.
But it's such an authentic film, and the guys are, there's that kind of shootout. And the guys are backing off, and you had a Navy SEAL. You knew somebody who was a guns expert or something.
My brother.
Your brother.
He was a technical advisor on all my films. He worked on this film.
It just seems so authentic.
Yeah.
You don't see movies really like that anymore. But maybe with the introduction of the streaming services, could you see more Way of the Gun type gritty, grimy crime films coming out?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, it takes time, and it's not necessarily what you would call, you know, it's not necessarily the most dramatic, energetic thing. The tendency is to make films that have a lot more kinetic energy and are a lot more impactful. What we focused on was how-to. I really like how-to stuff. So the idea of watching guys reload, how often it takes to reload, techniques, what happens when you're shot in the arm, and all of that stuff, that's what we put into the movie to give it that sense of authenticity.
You're seeing elements of that now even in other action movies like the John Wick movies. There's an emphasis put on those small moments that just seem to add to the overall experience.
Yeah. Well, and those guys, they're into that stuff. I mean, they're really, they understand that's the stuff that makes those things exciting. They're also brilliant filmmakers. I mean, that stuff looks fantastic. I don't know how they do that.
Well, I'm looking forward to rewatching The Way to Gun. It's been way too long. And congratulations on the movie, and congratulations on the reviews. Delighted to see it doing so well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little freaked out by that. That's a little overwhelming.
It's a very Irish thing not to be freaked out by compliments, I have to say.
Well, I'm not a guy who takes compliments anyway. Even the most so. Compliments like that are just, I want to curl up into a shell.
Even Oscars, that's the biggest compliment you can get.
Yes, and it's a scary one. I mean, I don't look that gift horse in the mouth. I know that that everything comes with a cost. And when you see, look, here's what I know. Here's where my mind is when a film is received as well as this one is, which I'm incredibly grateful for. I know I'm going to get kicked in the teeth on the next one no matter what. Just the level of expectation is just there. That's the ebb and flow. You just know, you see the pattern all the time. You come out on a high note, and you see filmmakers do their most critically lauded stuff, and then their next movie is the best movie they've ever made, and it takes 10 years for anybody to figure that out, because through all of that noise, they were like, come on, it's supposed to be the greatest movie ever. And you're just like,
it's going to age like a fine wine.
I didn't do that on purpose. I was just trying to make a movie.
Chris McQuarrie, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you so much.
Henry, congratulations on the film. The reviews have just come out today as we're shooting, and they're phenomenal, so it's good to hear.
Yes, I'm very, very excited. Very excited.
It must be an insane thing to be part of, but was it the physicality of the role that not drew you to the role, but that they approached you for somebody that could go toe-to-toe with Tom Cruise, that had the presence?
What attracted me to the role
was
McQuarrie and being in a movie with Cruise. And Cruise is a great producer, and McQuarrie's also a great producer, but a fantastic genius-level writer and director. And so for me, that was the major opportunity. When McQuarrie gives you a call, you're like, okay, it's going to be good. And the character initially sort of had a basic outline. This is what it kind of is. It could go somewhere else, or we could just kind of leave it on this level. And as the movie went on, the character became more complex and more in-depth and was changing on a regular basis. And so that just made it like a fun, ever-shifting, sort of evolving character to play.
Chris has obviously made these two Mission Impossible movies, and he directed a movie a few years ago called Way of the Gun. Have you seen Way of the Gun?
I have indeed.
It's a cracking film, and I got to talk to Chris about it a few minutes ago. Were you hoping there'd be a bit of that gravitas, a bit of that masculinity kind of injected into this role too?
Absolutely. You know that there's going to be masculinity in this role, and it's fun to play that kind of stuff. I'm from a family of 6 men, and we've now got a whole bunch of other men in our nephews, and it's great, and I relish the opportunity to play more roles with that masculinity on them.
Speaking of which, I suppose your first kind of lead role before Man of Steel was Immortals. And there's a moment in Immortals, I think, where you can kind of see you becoming a movie star.
Okay.
Because you see other actors kind of not fail at it, but maybe not have the presence or the physicality for it, where you're kind of rallying the troops.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those films as well where you're shirtless for the whole film, so you have to, more or less, and you have to be training your ass off. You have to be physically imposing. Was there a moment for you where you felt like, okay, this is starting to happen now?
For Immortals, I don't know if that was the moment where it's like this is starting to happen. I was just enjoying making the movie, and I loved working with Tarsem. Tarsem is a wonderful person, a great director, and I think it's difficult to look at oneself and say I'm becoming a movie star. I don't think that really happens, and if it does, the chances are you're not becoming a movie star, you're just becoming a fool. And it's one of those moments of when you see it from the outside, when things start happening, all of a sudden scripts start flying your way, and you think, what is happening? And someone says, oh, you're a movie star. And they say it not with excitement, but with flat fact. I think that's the kind of odd moment where you think, why did that person just say that like, oh, that's a cup of coffee? And those are the moments, I think, where you start to consider how the rest of the world is viewing you.
Did you fathom at all how much your life would change on the back of Man of Steel and the roles that followed, or The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Man of Steel and the roles that followed?
I tried to be as prepared as possible. I had a fair idea. I mean, it's the age of social media and the age of celebrity media, and you see sort of how a lot of people are affected or hounded, or life changes in general for the better, and sometimes the less private. And I try to be as prepared as possible. Nothing can prepare you when it actually happens. It still surprises me sometimes. I'm like, oh, whoa, that seems a bit much, but okay. But that's just the nature of it, and you got to roll with those events as they happen.
And speaking of rolling, I know we were just kind of talking there off camera about training in jiu-jitsu. It must be strange for you to kind of go on the mat, when you first start as a white belt, and then for people to be like, okay, I'm going to roll with Superman. Was that joke cracked a fair few times early on?
A lot of those jokes are cracked, yeah, and it's fun. I love jiu-jitsu, and to have a professor like Hodja is an absolute privilege. It's an honor, and Hodja's a friend of mine, and I consider myself very lucky. And I wish I had more time right now to be rolling, but with a schedule as punishing as this, let alone going for a short run, is difficult enough.
Does it feel like a different kind of training as well? Because obviously you're lifting weights to get into a specific role.
Yeah. The kind of jiu-jitsu fitness is a different thing. It's because when you're just rolling around and learning stuff, and then when you actually start fighting, it's extraordinary how much it gasses you straight away, and it forces you to start thinking. And that's what I like about jiu-jitsu the most, is that it's a thinking sport, and you have to be constantly aware of what's going on, constantly planning, constantly reading and assessing. And you can't be thinking about anything else. And in my line of work, where I'm either thinking about a script, or producing something, or building something, or the character that I just left set from playing, or whatever's going on in the media, or whatever my parents are doing, or whatever my brothers are doing, or what I need to feed Cal, my dog, I can't think about that because someone will choke me out. So it has to be this, and all of a sudden I can exist within this world that is just enjoyable, right up until you get choked out. And then it's less enjoyable.
By a smaller guy or a woman a lot of the time as well. There's something kind of really humbling about it.
Yeah, getting turned into a pretzel by someone who weighs 100 pounds is a unique experience, and it's definitely a learning one.
Well, Henry Cavill, congratulations on the film.
Thank you very much.
What the hell is he doing?
I find it best not to look.